It's the most horrifying time of the year, when the slashers are slashing and monsters are gnashing your bones and you're in fear. It's the most horrifying time, yes, the most harrowing time, oh, the most terrifying time of the year. Like a good old PB&J, fufu and okra-based stew or chicken, ugari nyama choma na kachumbari, or githeri and avocado. I think I just made myself hungry. Some things just go all too well together, and one such thing is horror and anthologies. Something about short horror stories stuffed back to back to back just hits different. And so allow me to take you back to 2021 to the Nigerian Horror Anthology, Juju Stories. Containing 3 short films, Love Potion, Yam, and Suffer the Witch, I dare say that this is one for the holidays. The Halloween holidays. And so real quick, I would love to go through all of these with as little spoilers as possible to whet your appetite. Written and directed by Michael Omonua, this film covers the tale of Mercy, played by Belinda Yanga Ageda, who is infatuated with the idea of building a long, healthy, and loving relationship with Leo, played by Paul Utomi, with just one hiccup, that being that Leo is engaged to be married. But what's love got to do with it if you can just whip up your very own love potion and get whomever you desire?
Where there's a will, there's a way. You don't try use Otomoko before.
Well, it is just as the lyrics say, who needs a heart when a heart can be influenced? And with that, we have the plot out of the way. I will be leaving it there. I really do not want to spoil any of these 3 films in this video. All that said and done, Juju Stories is what I would classify as folk horror. This subgenre of horror films incorporates folklore from various human cultures and invokes fear and foreboding through that, which is exactly what Juju Stories sets out to do. It's kind of in the name, Juju being heavily tied to African folklore. However, Love Potion in particular is one that I would term as emotional horror. Now, this is not actually a category that exists for horror films, but it would fit quite snugly into the psychological horror umbrella, which is actually a subgenre that I feel the Love Potion story fits into. Anyways, what I meant by emotional horror is that this film will bring up suppressed emotional damage for anyone and everyone who is still dealing with any sort of a breakup or any unrequited love, or generally if you're fresh from a character development experience but haven't quite moved on yet. In short, if you're part of any of the groups I've named, bring some tissues. The film itself is not entirely what we would call scary. Well, depending on how far your mind stretches and any deeply rooted fears of the mystic arts being used against you, especially when it comes to controlling your primal urges such as love and lust and so on and so forth. For me though, this felt like the first act to a feature-length film rather than a horror short. There's just this feeling that if we had 45 or so more minutes in this, we could have explored more sinister consequences to the effects of the Nyash elixir. You know, put a little more oomph into that how to handle your crush before you crash messaging. All in all, this works if you're looking for something light to watch on All Hallows Eve or for younger viewers getting into horror films. This is, and I kid you not, a story about Tabo Granny. Helmed by writer-director Abba Makama, Yam is well, one of those you can't quite talk about and it not end up being a complete spoiler. So I will completely skip the plot synopsis for this one, though you should 1. Watch the film for yourself, it's actually a very good one, or 2. If you actually do want a breakdown from moi, then you can comment down below and I will be glad to do it for you. I can say, however, that this film definitely fits into the folk horror subgenre theming that Juju Stories was going for. If you've read any African thriller or horror folktales, Yam invokes some familiarity to those, such as The Nosy Girl, a story about a young girl who, despite warnings against going out into the night to witness a ritual she wasn't supposed to see, ended up having her nose elongated into the size of a trunk. A story that is meant to scare kids straight into obedience. Or the story of the man who ate the tastiest meat ever and spent his entire lifetime trying to find out the source of that meat, only to discover that it was next man's liver.
Where you there, where you be? I beg.
A story about greed, contentment and all that juicy stuff. Pun not intended. Yam very much flows into the same vein as those folk stories, boasting a cast of renowned performers such as Elvis Poko, Done Kwazi, Eric Nwanso, Michael Ejor and Uzoamaka Aniono. With Valerie Dish and Rosanna Adenuga, Yam deploys its talent fantastically to drive this narrative. Again, not particularly scary, but best believe it is a little disturbing, especially if you're one who gets a bit squeamish when certain uncomfortable thoughts and ideas are plugged into your brain. Okay, this one was by far the most trippy of the trio.
Oh, you guys.
Which does that mean?
Everyone in school knew Mark and Ebele were cultists.
Writer-director CJ Obasi paints us the story of a young college student, Chinwe, played by Bukola Oladipupo, who is seemingly hostage to a friendship with her class and roommate, Joy, played masterfully by Nengi Adoki, that turns out to be special in very eerie and unsettling ways. Now, don't mean to repeat a joke, but if it fits...
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, let's just say that crazy is back on top of the wanted hierarchy. Am I right, guys? Guys? Oh, just me? Well, in terms of an element of fear factor in horror, this one might be the one that actually delivers on that. There are scenes and inferences in this short film that are absolutely terrifying. One particular one revolves around a character named Ikena, played by Timini Egbukso, and that one can't stay with you for a while. Much like Yam before, I feel like if I were to give a plot synopsis for this, I would absolutely spoil it. And we've already established that that is not the aim of this video. I actually want you to go and watch Juju Stories. It is very compact and quite sweet for a horror anthology, especially for audiences that do not consider themselves horror fans. This does not quite go into the realms of darkness that are advertised in other horror films.
I know it. And he knows it. All our guys, they know it.
Now, I hadn't mentioned this earlier because if I did, then you would be hearing this for the third time as it applies to all three films. Moving to the point, these shots are shot absolutely gorgeously. Everything from the cinematography to the costumes to the makeup to the set designs are all magnificent. And just chef's kiss, full props to all the crew specialists who had a role in handling these departments across all three films. So, my final verdict, and I believe I've already said this before, but this anthology is definitely worth the watch for both horror and non-horror fans. It may not hold the promise of gore and scares that audiences have been programmed to expect in films labeled as horror films, but the elements, subject matter, and narratives here pretty much fulfill the criteria to call this folk horror. And with a runtime of less than an hour and a half, this anthology is a marvel to enjoy over every other Halloween to come.
Drop now.
It has been your soon-to-be favorite spooky Uncle Omari, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Cut it.